Bruce, I have to tell you, I find that quite fascinating that she's discussing whether or not they were drugged. We know there was testimony from her that one of the victims, you could even tell a close contact burn wound showing that the gun was right up against the skin. Now, she had said that, for Chris Sr., there was only caffeine in his system, not this kind of drug. But it does make you wonder in this kind of attack, because the defense keeps bringing up a lot of the weed business and whether or not this was a drug cartel hit. I'm curious, when you think about the planning and the execution style of this, what are your takeaways?
Well, I think that obviously it's a very disturbing scenario. In any event, I think what the witness is talking about is how she processed the bodies and what she saw, and that goes to the chain of custody of evidence as well as to establishing the facts related to the deaths, and it's all part of what the prosecution has to establish to meet their burden and move the case forward. So I think it's disturbing to think that these people were murdered in their sleep and in such a violent way. And I think as we hear more testimony, we'll learn more about what actually happened and what effects these different poisons and gunshots had with regard to the murders.
Well, Oscar, how much of this is tied to actually the defendant, George Wagner IV? Obviously, they said in the opening statements, you're going to hear a lot of bad things about the Wagners. And just because he's a Wagner doesn't make him a murderer. And we know that Jake and Angela are going to testify against him. But from what you're seeing so far, how much is the evidence tied against directly the defendant?
Well, none. And, that's what a forensic coroner is just supposed to do. And again, this is a product of a lot of the television streaming shows where coroners and CSI now has kind of grown in the mind of individuals. But the coroner's job is not to tie it necessarily to the defendant. Coroner's job is to say, this is what the forensic evidence tells us about the manner in which they were killed. It's the parent, it's the other witnesses that are going to come later.
Let me ask you that, Oscar. Based on what you've seen, we have about a minute left. Other than the coroner, how strong is the evidence that we've seen so far against George Wagner?
Again, not so much against him. That's going to come from the cooperating witnesses. And we had some testimony earlier on that he made a comment or his father made a comment, if I had to argue with these people, I'd have to go out and kill them. So there's some connection there as to motive. But the real juice against the defendant is going to come from his family members who are scheduled to testify against him.
And you better hope, the prosecution better hope that they testify truthfully, because not only do you have a problem prosecuting cases against George Wagner, but then there's the interesting predicament of what happens to their deals. Remember, they're testifying against George Wagner to take the death penalty off the table. So their hope is that they're testifying truthfully and their testimony doesn't conflict with one another. Oscar Michelin, Bruce Rosenberg, that's all right. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Linda Kenny Bodden is up next.